All right, Marie. So thank you so much again for coming on to our podcast. We're really excited, and you're like a really exciting person to talk to. So I can't wait to see what this whole podcast looks like. But before we begin, we have to get a feel for who you are, because our guest likes to know the story, the backstory behind how people got into the field that they're in.
Absolutely. So I am a lifelong entrepreneur. I started my first business at 22 when I decided that I really didn't like the way that belly dancers were treated in Chicago. And so, of course, what did I do? I opened my own agency and I started booking family events and really kind of taking control of where I wanted to go. And in very short order, I found myself with a lot of opportunities that really kind of led me down the path of leadership and marketing. At 24, I became the executive director of eWomen Network, which is a national PR marketing and media firm, simply because my friend took me to an event which was about 12 women in a very dark restaurant. And at the end, she walked me up to the front, introduced me to the woman who was running it, and said, "This is my friend Marie. I think she should be the next director." I wish she had asked me first, but it was definitely an interesting opportunity. And it gave me the ability to not only connect with hundreds and hundreds of business owners across the Chicagoland market, but to really understand what was broken in their businesses and what was keeping small business owners from really creating success. And a lot of it was strategy. So the next thing that I learned was that I didn't know how to sell. I didn't know how to sell anything. I knew how to talk, but there's a difference. And so I hired a sales coach, and he and I worked together over the course of about 10 years. We would refer business back and forth because at this point I had my marketing consulting agency up and running, and he was training sales. And you don't get to prove your ROI if the people inside can't close, and if they're not getting good leads, they don't have anything to close. And so 10 years after we met, we became a family. And about 3 years after that, we said, what are we doing? Why are we not in business together under the same roof? And so in 2016, we opened At Revenue, which is one of very, very few firms in the entire country that combine both sales and marketing as a hand-in-glove experience. And what we realized is we have lightning in a bottle. People were growing their businesses 2, 3, 10x in the course of a year. I just got a call this weekend from a client who graduated from our sales training 2 months ago, and he just booked $1 million in business in his first 6 months.
Wow, nice. That's nice.
And to hear that, to hear him have that confidence and that passion and that enthusiasm, and to know that he's out there doing great work, is kind of everything that we dreamed of. And unfortunately, my partner, my love, he passed about 7 months after we opened. And so I had to make a decision. I had to either keep walking and keep following our dream, or go find something else. And I was not about to give up on what I know truly created abundance for the people that we work with. And so I kept going, and now we're 3 years in. We've crested 7 figures in our own little firm, and we've helped more than 25 small business owners grow up way past 7 figures and do it all from a place of love. And I think that's a really great position to be in, and to be able to share that family love is really why we do it.
Wow, that was an amazing story.
Yes.
And
thank you so much for your vulnerability.
Yeah, because I mean, that's tough. I hear what you've been through, And I just could not imagine, losing that other half of not only your personal life, but, your business life as well, and, still move forward. So my hat's off to you. Like that, man,
Thank you.
wow. But you touched on several different things during your story that I found kind of interesting. And I don't know if Jasmine picked up on it, but I always pick up on like the small, minute things sometimes. So you mentioned that before you had met your future husband and business partner, that you knew how to talk, but you didn't know how to sell. Can you explain the difference in that? Because I think some people may not necessarily know the difference between like, oh, I could talk to people, so of course I'll be good at sales, but
Mhm.
that may not be the case. So can you expand upon that difference a little bit?
Oh, I would absolutely love to. Um, Sales isn't about talking. Sales is about listening and embracing a wild curiosity about the person that's sitting across from you and what's truly important to that person and where they are and what's going to help them reach their goals. And when you're really looking at the sales process, I mean, we talk a lot about the psychology of how people make decisions and what the most motivational factors are. But as a kid who, I grew up in Las Vegas. I was went to a performing arts school. I could talk, I could figure out my way in and out of all kinds of trouble. I thought, listen, you put them in front of me and I'll sell them. But it wasn't until I was really, really educated on the why behind what people choose to do with their time and their money and their energy that I really started to understand what sales really is. And it's about making people feel heard, making sure that they know that they're important, and making sure that you're coming to a conclusion, whatever it may be, that's a great fit for everybody involved. Because not everybody's a good client for you. You're not a good client for everybody else.
Yep.
But that ability and the amount of patience it takes to ask, and really to ask people about like their deep feelings during maybe the first or second meeting, is not something that comes naturally, and it sure doesn't come if you're doing all the talking.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. So can you give me a little bit of insight on maybe some common mistakes that you see some business owner uh, make often when it comes to sales? Because I feel like, kind of like you said, like you can have great marketing, but if nobody knows how to close, then your business kind of suffers for that. And I kind of want to know, like, what are some things that a lot of times, 90% of the time, you're going to have to tweak anytime you sit down with a client and they make the decision to work with you?
Yeah, the very first thing is understanding who a good client is for you. Because if you're coming at it with that underlying desperation of like, if I don't close this person, I don't know what's going to happen. And listen, we've all been there.
Yeah.
Living on a flexible income is brutal.
Yeah.
I mean, it's intense, but it's so much more critical that you are interviewing that other person just as much as they're interviewing you for whatever it is that you're selling. And when you get that gut feeling that they are going to be a pain, and you've got to listen to it, and we can all talk ourselves out of that very, very easily. The second thing is it really is all about the people. So when we're working with folks that are highly analytical or very, very just absolute people pleasers, and they want to make sure that the yeses are there more than the nos.
Yeah.
You got to almost pull them back from that and say, okay, yes, it's about them, and yes, we want to make them happy, but we've got to understand what a compelling reason is. And for us, a compelling reason to do business with someone is it's a reason that's personal and emotional, and only sometimes is it financial. There's always a way to figure out the finances, but if there's not a reason that's truly going to impact this person, you don't have a deal. And the third thing is what we call the ambush. And that is, once you've got a yes, I want you to ask the questions about what it is that could possibly tank this sale when you're not around. And it's terrifying because everybody's like, no, I got a yes. Why would I try and ask the questions? You know? But if you don't have it in you to say, hey, listen, what happens if you go back to your business partner and tell them how excited you are that you're going to spend $50,000 on this new program, and they say, are you out of your mind? You've got one chance to coach them through that, right? So you'd better do it while they're at the table if you didn't have a hidden decision maker there. So there's some scary pieces that we go into.
Yeah, we even learned that like as we took some training like last year, that you should always make sure you're talking to like the decision maker, because a lot of times people go home and talk to their spouse and then the spouse is like, no.
So my favorite example is, I used to know the exact dollar amount that I would reach at Target before I had to call before I got home. One, if I spent that much, I'm probably going to need help in the car. But two, he's going to want some time to be prepared. We're seeing that on this statement. Same goes for those business decisions.
Yeah, that's true. And you touched on another point when you were talking about just listening to that gut feeling when a client isn't necessarily the best client for you. What do you coach people to do in that situation? Because I know it can be really scary as a entrepreneur to like literally have to say no to somebody because, I mean, you're just not a good fit, especially, you know, I don't know what your average client's, you know, sale looks like, but I mean, if you're dealing with $10,000 or even six figures or even like multiple six figures, like it could be rough, but I believe it's important. And how do you coach people through that?
That's a tough one because it's a little bit different for each person, right? You know, they've got different needs and different things that go into that. And so when we're looking at understanding when someone isn't a good fit, you almost want to take that piece where let's say they sat down and they were confrontational right off the bat. Well, we really work on the theory that it's got to be okay for everyone. And if you're treating me from the very first interaction, you know, once we get past the niceties of we're on opposite sides of the table, there's a lot of power in calling that out and saying, hey, listen, Jasmine, you know, can I ask you a question? I know that when we sat down, I told you I might ask you some tough things, but this is one of them. I almost feel like we're on different sides of the table here. Do you feel that way, or is that just, am I just picking that up wrong? And almost stepping back into a state of confusion allows that other person to step to you and to try to make it okay by you. And if you know, if that's really where they're at, they'll let you know. Like, I expect all of our conversations to be rather forceful because you're a consultant and you're going to do what I tell you to do. Well, honestly, Joseph, people pay me the kind of money they do because I'm an expert. And my credibility is based on my ability to produce results. And the last thing I want is somebody out there saying that we don't live up to our end of the bargain. So I really feel like this just might not be a best fit. Let me refer you to my competition.
And honestly, I think that's great because, I mean, I feel like as a consultant, you probably do run into a couple people that are really confrontational and really aggressive and things of that nature. But I almost would ask the question, like, why would you pay me to tell me what to do? It's like, so like you're basically paying me all this money and I don't have to think because you know it all. So it's like, it's almost like a waste.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm pretty sure it does happen.
It does, and it's tough. It's tough. I think the other part of that too is sometimes no is the right answer. Sometimes you need to put a markup on it because you know that they're going to take extra rounds of review or pushback or additional hours and hours of just getting them to get out of their own way. And it doesn't mean that they're not worth it. It doesn't mean that they're not great at what they do, but it's going to take you extra time and effort. And you, as you get more attuned with your business and your processes, being able to account for that will make sure that you don't lose money on a client, because that's the last thing any of us needs to be doing.
Definitely.
So we already know what makes you unique to the marketplace, because you are pretty much the only person that we know of that combines marketing and sales. So not only do you do that, but you also told us that you provide training, right?
We do. So our sales coaching and training it's not a weekend workshop. It's not a, I'm going to tell you how to trick people into buying your stuff, because it really does come from a place of authenticity and abundance. And we call it professional love. And changing some of the paradigms that we all bring with us into the sales process takes time. Mm-hmm. If you don't like talking about money, and who likes talking about money? We were all told not to talk about it, right? If you got it, you don't want people to know that you've got it. Yeah. If you don't got it, you don't want people to know that you don't got it. And so we've got all of this crazy messed up head trash.
Yeah.
And so that training part, a lot of it, yes, is here's the how to, and here's how to ask those questions, and here's how to dig when somebody doesn't want to answer. But it's also training you to look doubt in the eye. Yeah. And sometimes you say, you know what, I know you're trying to protect me. I appreciate it, but you're not serving me anymore. And sometimes it's saying, you know what, I didn't deserve to carry you around for all of these years. You're not helping. Get out. Right? And one of my favorite stories is from one of our clients, that he used to be the director of marketing for a very large firm, and he had a salesperson come and sit in his office with a box of donuts. And she had a scheduled meeting, and she forgot to make sure that the other decision maker was going to be at that meeting. And she looked at him with this box of donuts in her lap, and she said, I'm excited to talk to you, but I'm not going to talk to you unless your boss also comes in. So I'm just going to sit here and wait until she's ready. And she sat there with a box of donuts on her lap for 45 minutes and would not have a conversation with him. And he took that with him, and for years was afraid to ask if the person he was speaking to was a decision maker, because she made him feel so disempowered and so small. And when he was able to really understand what he was carrying around and what impact he was allowing that to have on him, he could actually look at it and get it to move and get it to go away and be able to have the kinds of conversations that he needed to have. And it was like the floodgates just flew open for him. Mm-hmm. And those are the kinds of pieces that we really work towards. So when we say sales coaching and training, let's just say that you're going to have to get really good about talking about your feelings, and then you get to watch your company grow 10x in 8 months.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So it's basically just going to therapy, pretty much.
I try not to call it that, mostly because I'm not licensed, but Listen, there's a lot of emotion that we carry around, and if you're going to do anything from a place of abundance, the abundance has to start with you. You have to be abundantly gracious with yourself and willing to put in that hard work that's going to lighten you up so that you can move forward.
Mm-hmm. So what does your ideal client look like?
So we have a few different specialties, but most of the folks that we work with are B2B service providers. So accountants, attorneys, engineers, people that have these very advanced degrees, and none of it came with a sales class, right? They didn't bother to teach you how to run that chiropractic practice.
Mm-hmm.
When you were in you were busy becoming a chiropractor.
Yeah.
And now you've come out and you've realized that you've got to close people into coming back. Mm-hmm. And into actually paying their bill and all of these different things. So we work a lot in that service provider level, and then we also work a lot in manufacturing, because the world of manufacturing is changing dramatically, and unfortunately America has gotten itself into a space where most of manufacturing is a bid war, and you submit your quote and whoever is a couple pennies less gets the business, and they've lost a huge amount of their margins. So we're really working with a few associations here in the Illinois area and nationally to help change that sales process kind of across the country for manufacturing, so they can start to be in more of a relationship-based selling arena.
Oh, that's actually really cool, because I've always been curious about the business of manufacturing, but I was kind of in the same mindset where it's like I always know that it's going to be like a price thing, and like if another manufacturer always beats you in price, then like, you know, there goes your customer, and you know these customers are probably worth millions of dollars, you know,
Right.
on the low end probably. So I think it's really great that you focus on, and you know who your ideal customer is, which is like great, because a lot of business owners may not even know that. But the fact that you work with, you know, B2B, you know, manufacturers, things of that nature, like I feel like is really, really good, because I feel like some people kind of forget that businesses are consumers at times too.
Mm-hmm.
And
100%.
and you could correct me if I'm wrong, but it's a different way to sell to a business than it would be an individual consumer, if I'm not mistaken.
It is. And, you know, we're also talking about, is it a, you know, typically it's not a retail situation that we work in. It really is selling a solution, selling the relationship. There's probably a product behind it, but how do you turn that into something more substantial? And how do you make sure that you're growing up into your clientele as well? Because we live in a point and click, get it in one day delivery, if not delivered by a drone society, when it comes to the retail side of things.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Business is completely different. They're looking to you to be solution providers. And a great example is, especially in the marketing industry, people used to pay big money to agencies to come up with one great idea. And then the agency wasn't responsible for implementing it. The results, nothing. They got their 50 grand for their one good idea, and they're on to the next thing, right? Now clients are expecting agencies to take it all the way through and prove ROI.
Yeah.
And so if that's how things are changing, we'd better be ahead of the change, and we'd better be putting the processes into place so that we can not be the sole salesperson in our organizations.
So when it comes to servicing, you know, these large B2B corporations, what are some challenges that you've ran into with helping them, and how did you overcome some of those challenges as well?
So it's going to come as no surprise that there are a variety of challenges. The one that I see most frequently, though, and it cracks me up because I know this is a podcast, so most people can't see that I'm a 5-foot little blonde lady. But most of the time I will go into an organization and let's say they've had a sales force of 3, 6, 8, 10 people that have been working there, and there doesn't seem to be a manager that is willing to fire a salesperson when they know that they're not the right fit. And it's almost like the salespeople are really good at selling one person, and that's the person who hired them. And they'll be there for. I've seen people that are like, I needed to fire him six years ago. Can you please do that for me?
Wow.
Like, sure, I'll be the heavy, not a problem, right? But it really is understanding what to expect of sales teams, how to hold them accountable, and how to create the structures to help move them forward, but make sure that they've got skin in the game, because sales is hard work. And if you're not emotionally invested as well as financially invested in your success, then you're simply not going to continue to produce.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely. So what are some of those qualities that you may see in a salesperson that will make you go, I don't know about this guy?
Oh, so many. Honestly, the very first thing is how they talk about their clients. If they don't have respect for their clients, listen, everybody gets frustrated. Lord knows, like I have a business friend policy that says whenever you need to call me and scream it out, I will let you scream for 5 minutes. And then you have to explain anything, you could just get it out and be done. But if you hear kind of that old school mentality of the hyper aggressive boys club, and all business is done over golf and scotch, cool. I love scotch. It's got to be good scotch, but I love scotch. But that's not how business is done. And I want somebody who's thinking outside of the norm. The other big piece is we've got to make sure that we are looking for diversity. And just because somebody's a smooth talker, which is what we all used to look for, right, doesn't mean that they're going to be a good salesperson. There are a lot of highly analytical people that make wonderful salespeople, because they're going to make sure all of the details are handled. And sales is about details. Giving them the tools that they need to effectively communicate to people that have a different behavioral style than they have is really the key to creating a successful environment for them to thrive. And so finding those couple of attributes, as well as someone who is really, really dedicated to continuous improvement, and more than just going to the sales awards event where they give you the rah-rah speech at the beginning and you get a glass piece of something to put in your office. But people that are constantly in a state of personal and professional development, that's a really great sign, because they're working on themselves spiritually and they're working on themselves professionally, which means that they are constantly going to work to achieve. And you have to have those pieces come together in order to be able to help people continuously elevate.
Yeah. And it's really cool that you say those attributes too, because you mentioned that how a lot of business owners might look for the smooth talker, but that person might not necessarily be the best salesperson. And that kind of goes back to what you were saying before, that it's more so about how they care about the client and the customer. And it's really cool because I've met people. I used to work at Best Buy a long time ago, and it was this guy there. I mean, he did not seem like he would be a great salesperson because he was kind of awkward. He just was a little awkward in like just weird little ways. But that man used to close everything, and I was like, "What is this guy doing?" Because I'm like, I was trying to be at least the smooth talker. I don't know if I was, but I felt like I was better than him, and he always used to outclose me every single day, like consistently. But I do believe it's probably back to that he was emotionally, like you said, emotionally invested into the client and making sure that they got what they actually came for, or even more than what they came for.
Yeah, that he solved the problem as opposed to the initial surface pain.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely.
Yeah.
So, what are some of the services that you offer to your clients?
So we have a really unique mix because we scale businesses that are sometimes solopreneurs and all the way up to $30 million companies. That takes a pretty big range. So one of the roles that kind of became defined by Silicon Valley in the past couple of years is the Chief Revenue Officer role. And that is truly the executive that looks at both the sales structure, strategy, processes, and results, and the marketing strategy, and how those pieces are working together, and creates the synergy between those, and then holds them accountable to achieving those pieces. And so within that, not only do we offer all of the services that it takes within a sales department, from hiring to onboarding to training to teaching the leadership how to be sales leaders and not be afraid to fire the sales guy, to taking that over to the other side and doing full-scale marketing strategy and implementation. So full digital marketing services, including running your social media, because that's no small business owner has time to be in there running their social media, and you can't just find the next magical millennial unicorn and expect that they're going to know, how to get your message across and how to get results.
I wish.
And in that, we also kind of stretch outside of the digital marketing realm and work through things like training and placing public speakers and teaching people how to effectively network, because it's not all net drinking. You're not meant to go out and just hopefully bump into somebody who wants to give you cash. There's a strategy to that, and there's a way to pull that into all of the other tools so that everything in your arsenal stacks on each other, creates intrinsic value for the other pieces that are there, and everything that you put into your sales and marketing has the utmost return on your investment possible. And that is really where you get the value out of a firm like At Revenue or working with an agency of any kind. They see all of the individual pieces and how they build upon each other, as opposed to doing the random acts of marketing that you might see the needle move a little bit, but you're never going to realize the amount of potential you truly could if you had seen how everything connects.
Definitely. Yeah, it's definitely a strategy to it, because I've tried to do here and there, and I have seen that it does not work firsthand.
Yeah, you'll gain like freaking 40 followers in a week, and then all of a sudden next week you don't post anything, and then those 40 followers are gone, or you might even lose like 50 or 60, and it's like, jeez, like like you said, there's no time. And it was funny because when we first got into business, we would look at these people that would do like different digital marketing, and we would think that it was them. And we were like, oh, well, I mean, Gary Vee seems to be busy. So, I mean, if he can do it, if he has time, I should have time. And I was like, no, this is not real. He can't run the business and do this at the same time. Like, no, absolutely.
No, but that's the art of having a good marketing team. Yeah. Is, sometimes it's the duck on the water where everything on the top is smooth, but underneath the water it's like flip, 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 like everything's going crazy. That means that you've got a good team behind you, and the person who is out there closing the sale, being the face of the company, looks like it's as graceful and easy as possible.
Yep. So what you do is definitely important.
Definitely. So a question I do have is, what is like one major takeaway that you always want your clients to walk away with?
That's a great question. For us, the major takeaway is always going to be that you got to do business from a place of professional love. whether it's putting together your marketing strategy or closing that new client, if we haven't instilled in you that this is all about the other person, that you will create abundance and an ecosystem of abundance that lifts you up as you lift others up, then that's when we feel like we've fallen down. We want to make it easier. We want to make you shine. We want to make more revenue, but we want to make sure that you know that this is all part of a society. Small business is the lifeblood of our society. It makes families better and neighborhoods better and more secure, and allows people to donate to nonprofits, and it strengthens so many parts of what we see in our everyday that would simply be desolate if small business went away. And a great example is Flint. I was born in Flint, and when my parents were there in the early 80s working at GM, as everyone did, it was a much different society. And when we drove through it 20 years later, it was a ghost town. Mm-hmm. And it was because there wasn't a society of small business that was healthy enough to hold that area when everything fell apart.
Yeah, I resonate with that a lot, just because one of my friends who I joined the military with, he's from Flint, and he's actually a police officer there. So shortly after I met him, I think that was my first time going, and it's nuts what happens when a large business corporation like that just ups and leaves. It uproots a lot of families, and that's why what you do is really important. But just to wrap it all up, and to really respect your time and the time of our audience and the time of Jasmine, who has to edit this eventually, you brought up a word a lot today that I really, really liked, and it was abundance. And I think I already know the answer to this question, but we have to ask it because you're on the Abundant Culture podcast. So our question to you is, how do you spread abundance?
It is our mission to make sure that no small business owner has to fail because they didn't get a degree in sales and marketing. And so whether that means that we're providing our services in an education format so they can do it themselves, or doing it for them, or whatever it takes, we never let money be the reason that you don't make the best decision possible for your business.
Absolutely.
There's always a way. And I think in that space, because we can lift others up, that abundance just keeps stretching and amplifying. And so if we can keep investing in the people that we know are going to invest in themselves and in others, it creates an intrinsic chain of abundance that shouldn't end.
I love it. I love it. So how can people reach out to you? Because I'm pretty sure a lot of people have heard this podcast and they're like,
oh, I don't think I'm that good of a salesperson anymore.
or I suck at marketing, or I don't feel like doing social media, or like whatever the case may be, or I have a hard time firing this person even though I know they need to go. And they may need one of the services that you offer. So how can some business owner out there, preferably B2B, get into contact with you?
So you can find us online at atrevenue.com. Unfortunately, the name of the company has the @ symbol in it, so it makes it so that we have to spell it every time we tell someone to go to the website. And you can also find us on a variety of every social media outlet, of course, at atrevenue.com or atrevenue. And give me a call, 312-720-1399. I answered.
Awesome. Thanks for being on.
Well, thank you so much. This was super valuable for our audience.
Absolutely, guys. And thank you so much for the good work that you're doing. You definitely are the start in the chain of abundance.
Thank you.